Hey, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Kuf Tes Vav, Daf 115 on Masechta Yevamos. Friends, we're getting close to the end of Masechta Yevamos. Masechta Yevamos is 122 Daf, and we're on 115. That means one more week. One more week. Friends, today we start the 15th parak. Very interesting stuff. It talks about a situation where a woman testifies that her husband, in the words of our dear Chaver Dennis, Reb Dennis, was dispatched to Wellwood. And what happens? So, we're going to start in Daf Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis. We have a little bit of work to do, Lamais, in Daf Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis, but we're going to start at the new parak. So at least it was a clean stop yesterday. I'm going to start at the beginning of the new parak and Daf Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis. So you have a woman who goes with her husband to travel someplace. And all is good in their marriage. They're getting along very well. All is good in the world. There are no special military operations going on or anything like that. And she comes back and she says, Meiz Bailey, my husband was dispatched to Wellwood. Tinose, Meiz Bailey Tisyavn. If she says that her husband is dead, so she can get remarried, or do Yibum, depending on if there are children. If there are children, she can get remarried. If there are no children, so then she does Yibum. Shalom beinu leveinu milchama ba'olam. Now, if everything is hunky-dory in their relationship, but there's a special military operation going on, so ktata beinu leveinu, or if everything is not hunky-dory between them, they are fighting. V'shalom ba'olam, yet there is peace in the world. That sounds nice. Peace in the world. Yehi shalom. What is it? Yehi shalom b'chelich sharva b'amunusayich. Peace sounds like a nice thing, right? Peace. We love peace. Peace and love. That sounds like a great thing, right? Peace and love. That sounds nice. Peace and love. Alright? There's peace and love, although it doesn't say love. But come on. It's so much more chill. There's peace and love in the world. Very nice. And then she comes and she says, Meiz Bailey. And she says that her husband was dispatched to Wellwood, right? Meaning, right, there's peace between, right, peace and love, hopefully, in their marriage, but there's, war going on in the world. Or if, there is peace in the world, but, there is bumps in their marriage. So in that case, in either case, she is not believed. And the Gemara is going to explain why. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda la'olam eina ne'emenes. Rabbi Yehuda says she is not believed that her husband was dispatched to Wellwood. Ela imkein basa bochu v'gadei akruin. Unless she shows up to Bezdin like a basket case. She shows up to Bezdin crying with torn clothing. Amrulo achazo v'achazo tinasi. To which the rabbis say, meh. The rabbis say, look, clothes torn, no clothes torn, crying, not crying, doesn't make a difference. If she comes and says that her husband was dispatched to Wellwood, so then we'll believe her, assuming that there was peace and love in their marriage, and peace and love in the world. Tana shalom beinu levena mishum dekabai lemisnei ktata beinu levena. All right, it mentioned the situation where there is peace between them, because we had to mention a situation where there's fighting between them. Tana shalom ba'olam mishum dekabai lemisnei milchama ba'olam, because we had to mention what happens when there's war going on in the world. So therefore, we also mention what happens when there's peace in the world. Hamaravit says, "Rav, my time of the milchama. Oh, how come if there's a milchama going on in the world, we cannot believe her? Mishum de amr b'didame. The answer is because she will say based on conjecture. I think conjecture means like assumptions. Sagadaita b'cholhani deiktul hu palit, because she'll assume she's just going to make assumptions, right? That if there's war going on, her husband is nowhere to be found. And she's going to say, what? How could it be that everybody else died and my husband escaped? And she's therefore going to say, based on conjecture, that her husband died, but she doesn't really know for sure is the fact of the matter. And therefore we can't really believe her. And Tim Tzulomar came to Shalom Beinu Leveino Natra Dechazia. And even if you're going to suggest, yeah, but since there's peace and love between them, she's surely going to only say that he's dead if she knows that he's dead. Otherwise she's going to, have hope that he's alive. Zimnin demachu le bigera or biromacha. But still, there could be situations where he gets shot with an arrow or with a spear, visavra vaday mace, and she figures, look, he's definitely dead. Vika de avad samtei v'chaya. But the fact of the matter is, it is possible that there are those people who make dressings of sumptuary herbs, and they can live. So therefore, even seeing that he got shot doesn't necessarily mean that he's dead. You could survive, and she may be assuming that he's dead, even though he's really not. So therefore, things get complicated in the context of war, and that is why we cannot trust her when there is a situation of war. Rave Lememar. Now, Rave assumed to say Raivon Eino Kimilchama, that famine is not like war. And if that there's famine going on and she says that her husband's dead, we could believe her. Dilo Amr b'didami, that she's not going to say based on assumptions. Hadar Amr Rava Raivon Areu Kimilchama. But then, eventually Rava actually changed his mind to say that famine does have the same rule as war. Also l'kami de Rave, because there was once a woman who came before Rave, Amrle, and she said to him, Baili meis barav, my husband died in famine. Amar lo, and Rave said to her, Shapir avadit, deshez vas nafshech, you did the right thing to save yourself, because sakadaitich ba'ahu porta dinafefisa deshavkasle havachaye, you made the right decision by leaving your husband and saving yourself, because your husband was going to die anyways. Do you really think that by the little bit of flour that you left for him, he was going to survive? Of course he was not going to survive. And, you did the right thing to say, at least save yourself. Amrle, and she responded to Rava, my nami yoda, t'chiagavna lo chaye, and she says, yes, I'm happy that you recognize that he didn't have any chance of living. And that is why I left him with some flour and saved myself. So what do we see? So we see basically that Rava extracted from her that she actually doesn't know for sure that he survived, that he's dead, because she actually left him, basically on his deathbed to save herself, but she doesn't know for a fact that he's actually dead. So therefore Rava kind of did a 180 and said, Raivon Griya Mimilchama, that actually famine is more stringent than war. Because when it comes to war, so yeah, she's not believed to say that her husband died in war, because she might just be assuming, but but in the context of war, if she says that her husband died in his bed, right, so then we will believe her, right? If she says, yeah, there was a war going on, but I saw him die in his bed, so then we will believe her. However, when it comes to famine, she has to say not only that he died in his bed, because as we saw from the story, she may have left him when he was in his bed. Rather, she has to say that he died and then I buried him. Only at that point can we believe her in the context of a famine. If a building collapses, and somebody, unfortunately, is crushed in there. Unfortunately, this is something that happened, I think, around a year ago, right, in Florida. So a building that falls down, is like a war, that people might make assumptions, right, that they're nobody to be found, that they're nowhere to be found. Their house was in that building, and she might be assuming that her husband's dead, but without knowing for sure that he's dead. Also, if there are snakes and scorpions, that's also like a war. Damar b'didame, that she's going to say based on conjecture. Dever, a plague. Amrila areu k'milchame v'amrila einu k'milchame. So when it comes to a plague, so there are two opinions on the matter. As you might be able to guess, one says it's like a war, and the other one says it's not like a war. The opinion who says that it's like a war, is because when there's a plague, people are going to, make assumptions that they died from the plague, even though they don't know for sure. They didn't actually see them dead. And there are those who say that it is not like a war, because people in a plague rely upon what people say, that even if for 7 years there's a famine or a plague, a person will not die before their time. And therefore, even if there's a plague, people know that, someone's only going to die at the right time, at the time that they are meant to die. And therefore, they would not just assume that somebody is dead. Iboilu, friends, they ask the kasha. You hear the kasha? The kasha is, what if Bezdin was unaware that there was a special military operation going on somewhere? They didn't know. Now this woman comes and she says, look, there's a war going on and my husband died. So now if she would have just come and said that my husband died, so she would be believed, right? As we said, right? If there's peace and love between them and there's peace in the world, that sounds like a beautiful thing. So then she would be believed to say that her husband is dead. If there's a war, then she's not believed because we assume that she's, she might be making assumptions. Now what about in this case though, where the rabbis didn't know that there was a war? They only know that there's a war going on because she said that. Okay? And therefore, mi amina, do we say mala l'shaker? Well, why would she lie? If she was interested in lying, well then she could have just left out the fact that there's a war going on and just said that all is hunky-dory, my husband's dead, and we would believe her. So maybe we should say that from the fact that she's being honest and saying that there's a war going on, so she's trustworthy. She didn't have to say that there's a war. We would have believed her if she would have just not mentioned that detail. So from the fact that she's saying that there is a war going on, and it's important to her to bring this fact to light. So clearly she's honest and reliable, so we can rely upon also the fact that she's saying that her husband is dead. Or Dilma, or perhaps, or maybe we say, but look, even if this has nothing to do with honesty, right? Sure, she's being honest that there's a war going on, but the fact of the matter is, in war, the concern is that she might be making assumptions that her husband's dead, even though he isn't, out of the confusion of war. And, mali l'shaker, the fact that she's being honest doesn't necessarily affect the fact that in the context of war, she may, be assuming that her husband is dead, even though he might be alive. Tashma, come in here. Ishnu aleinu bayis, ishnu aleinu me'or. Right? They smoked us out of the house. They smoked us out of a cave. Who meis vani nitzalti? And she says, look, my husband died. Right? I don't know. They burnt down the house and there was a lot of smoke. I managed to escape. My husband died. Einana menace. She's not believed. So we want to say that if she's not believed there, right? So now again, this is a situation where she could have just said, my husband's dead, and we would believe her. But she gave extra details and mentioned the fact that there was, smoke in the house and they were burning down the house. The house burnt down. All of a sudden, we do not believe her. So right, even though she was being honest. So I would say here as well that maybe we should not believe her, even though she's being honest about the war. Shiny awesome, no, but that case is different. Because we'll say to her, just like a miracle happened to you. Maybe a miracle happened to him. How do you know? Tashma, come here. Nafla aleinu ovdei kochavim, nafla aleinu listim. So if she says that basically Nudniks came and attacked us, who meis vani nitzalti? My husband died and I was saved. Ne'emenes. She is believed. So maybe then we should believe her by this war thing as well. So Hasim Kid Rav Idi, we'll say no, there it's different because it's like Rav Idi, Rav Idi Isha Kleizeno Oleo. No, it's like Rav Idi who says that a woman, I'm not exactly sure how to understand this, but a woman has a way of getting saved in these kinds of situations, right? So if these nudniks came and attacked them, so, it would be more likely that her husband would be killed and she would be spared one way or another. And therefore, in that case, we could believe her that her husband was dead and that she was saved. So just to go back for a second, so in that situation where those nudniks attacked them, so it wasn't quite like, like a war or something, right? In that kind of a context, we're assuming that a woman has a way of getting saved in that context, and therefore she was able to kind of stick around and know that her husband died, and therefore we could trust her, as opposed to like a bigger kind of war. Maybe she, bounced even without knowing that her husband was really dead. Okay, so Abu Gavra, there was a certain fellow, the Bishile Lule, that at the end of his wedding, Isle Nur Beganone, so they were living in some house, and there was a fire, and it burnt down the house. Amr Lahu Divisu, and his wife was saying to the people, Chazu Gavroi, Chazu Gavroi, no, did you see my husband? Did you see my husband? Also, Chazu Gavra Charocha. They go into the house and they see that there is a charred corpse, Dishdi, lying there. Ufasta Diyoda Dishadya, and there is a detached hand that's lying there as well. So Rav Chia bar Oven lemeimar, now Rav Chia bar Oven thought to say, Hainu ishnu aleinu bayis, ishnu aleinu ma'or, that this should be the same thing as the case where that the house was smoked out, or the cave was smoked out, and we said over there that we do not assume that her husband is dead. So Rav, to which Rav says, wait, sure, where the house or the cave was smoked out, we said that we couldn't assume that the husband was dead, but this is different. Midami, is it similar? Over there, she wasn't, going back to search for her husband. She just kind of escaped. And we also, in this case, we actually see that there's a charred corpse. That wasn't the case by the cave or by the house in the earlier example where we do not believe her. But over here, she's escaping and she's saying, my husband's in there, and they went in and they saw a charred corpse. So over here, maybe we should be able to believe her that her husband's dead. Whereas Rav Chia bar Oven, who says that we cannot assume that her husband is dead, that regarding that charred corpse that's in there, I'll say that somebody else came to save them, and he ended up getting killed, but it's not her husband there. And regarding the hand, the detached hand that was lying there, I'll say that it's actually the detached hand of the husband who survived, and only his hand got detached. Nura Isalya, that a fire, chapped his hand, and made a blemish on it that caused his hand to be detached from his body. And he was so embarrassed by not having a hand that he ran away, never to be seen again. But he might be alive somewhere, and therefore Rav Chia bar Oven wanted to say that this is similar to the earlier case of the house and the cave that was like burnt down, and the husband, and she claims that her husband is dead, that we cannot trust her. So we cannot, believe that he's dead. So here also we cannot necessarily believe that he's dead, because he may have escaped, and the charred corpse is somebody who tried to save them, and the hand is actually the hand of the husband, and the husband managed to get away and is living in some other place. Ibayalu, they ask Akasha, what happens if there's a witness coming from the war, right? So if there's a witness coming from the war, and the witness says that the husband was dispatched to Wellwood. Do we say, well, the reason why we should believe one witness is because since it's something that can be objectively proved wrong, right? If the husband shows up the next day, then it disproves the witness. So since this, if the husband comes back the next day, he'll disprove him. So therefore, he has no, he'll be careful before he lies. I.e., he won't lie because he knows that he can be disproved. So the same thing would apply over here. By the Eid Echad says that the husband died in war. Well, if he shows up the next day, then the Eid Echad will be disproved, so he won't lie, and therefore we could trust him. Or maybe the reason why to trust a witness, one witness, is because then she's going to do her homework and make sure that the husband's really dead. Skip the brackets. Lo daika umin siba. But in this case, we're concerned that maybe she may not. There's a war going on, and she may not do proper due diligence. Amr Rami Bar Chama, says Rami Bar Chama, Toshma Kominir. Amr Rabakive, says Rabakive. Sharati l'Nardoya, when I went to Nardoya in Bavel, la'aber Ashana, to make a leap year, Maltosi Nechemi Ish Beis Dli. So I found over there in Nardoya, Nechemi Ish Beis Dli, the Amarli. And he said to me, Shamaiti she'ein masin es ha'isha b'Eretz Yisrael al pi Eid Echad. I heard that that in Eretz Yisrael they do not allow a woman to get remarried based on one witness. Ella Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Only Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava allows this, I heard. V'namti lo ken advarim. And Rabbi Akiva says, yeah, this is in fact the case. Amarli. So then, Nechemi Ish Beis Deli told me, says Rabbi Akiva, Emer loem mishmi, you can tell them in my name, Atem Yodim Medina Hazo Mishubeshes Begayosos. You know that that in Bavel there's lots of bandits and unpleasant people roaming around. But nonetheless, and we're going to have to understand what that means in a minute, but Kach Mikublani Rabbi Gamliel Azokin, this is the Kabbalah, this is the tradition that I have from Rabbi Gamliel Azokin, Shemasino Isha Alpi Eid Echad, that we do in fact allow a woman to get remarried based on one witness. Now, my Medina Mishubeshes, what does it mean when Necheme Ish Beis Deli points out the fact that in Bavel it's messed up with bandits, Bigayosos, with bandits. Lav Afagav, the Medina Zo Mishubeshes, Kach Mikublani Shemasin, Alpi Eid Echad. Isn't what he's saying is that even though there are bandits around, that it's a Shas Milchama, nonetheless we can trust in Eid Echad? Isn't that what he's saying? Alma Eid Echad Meheimin. So we see that we can trust in Eid Echad when there's a Milchama. Rave, says Rave, Ihachi, if that's the case, Maishno Medina Zo, Kol Makom Sheish Gayosos Mi Baile. But then what's specific about Bavel being a place of bandits? Really, it doesn't apply to Bavel, it applies to any place where there's Milchama, if that's the case. So Elam Rave, rather says Rave, Achi Kama, this is what Necheme Ish Beis Deli is saying. Atem Yodim Shemedina Zo Mishubeshes Begayosos. Look, right, he was basically sending a message with Rabbi Akiva to Eretz Yisrael, right? He asked Rabbi Akiva, is it true that they do not allow a woman to remarry based on one witness? He said yes, to which Necheme Ish Beis Deli responded, look, I would like you to send this message, the following message, to the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael. I can't go myself because there's a bunch of bandits around, but I would like for you to send this message. And I'm unable to leave my household in order to go travel to Eretz Yisrael because of all the bandits. But I would like for you, Rabbi Akiva, to relay the message that Kach Mekublani Rabbi Gamliel, that I have the tradition from Rabbi Gamliel, Shemasino Isha Al Pi Eid Echad, that a woman can remarry based on the testimony of one witness. But we see that it is not necessarily related to wartime, one witness during wartime. Toshma, common here. That there was a maise, there was a story with two Torah scholars who were traveling with Abba Yossi ben Simoi in a boat, Vitava. And I guess the boat capsized, and these two Talmidei Chachamim drowned. And Rebbe allowed their wives to get remarried based on the testimony of women. Now, water is treated like milchame, that there's, what does Rashi say? That you could argue that you might claim that they're dead based on speculation. You saw them drown in the water, right? You saw them get sucked into the water, but you didn't necessarily know that they were dead for sure. And we say that 100 women count as one witness, and therefore, and we see that Rebbe allowed the wives of these Talmidei Chachamim to get remarried, which was in a context of milchama, right? We're saying that the water is like a milchama and the women are like an eid echad. So we see that an eid echad is believed in the context of a milchama. V'tizbra, to which the Gemara says, 1 second. Is that really true, this logic? Ma'im she'en lo'im sofnenu. This was like an ocean or a sea. This is water that has no end. Ma'im she'en lo'im sof ishto asura. And in the context of like a great body of water, we cannot assume that the fellow is dead, because maybe he somehow got onto the boat somehow and got lost, but when the boat moved away, he actually somehow managed to survive. Right? I mean, he got lost in the water, you lost track of him, but maybe Taka survived. So therefore, we can't just assume that he is dead. Ela heichi dami. Rather, what happened in this case? The Amri askinu kamon. No, rather what happened in this case is that these two rabbis, these two Torah scholars drowned, and they immediately, the corpses were found, simonin, and these women pointed out simonim, signs, right? They were able to tell that these were in fact these two Talmidei Chachamim. And we're not relying upon these women who are giving testimony, rather we're relying upon the signs, right? We're not relying upon the testimony, we're relying upon the fact that they said, look, and there's some kind of sign, we're actually going to learn about this in a few days, but identifying signs that prove that these are these Torah scholars. So we're not relying upon the testimony in which we would be able to theoretically say, make the argument that, one witness should work in a context of milchama. No, this is simply, they were giving simonim, signs, and relying upon the signs, not upon the testimony, so this isn't an issue of testimony. There was a fellow who deposited sesame seeds by his chaver, by his friend. And then he says to his friend, hey, can I have my sesame seeds back? To which the fellow, right, let's call him Reuven and Shimon, right? So Shimon left sesame seeds by Reuven's house. Shimon then says to Reuven, hey, Reuven, can I have back my sesame seeds? And Reuven says, oh, you already took the sesame seeds. To which Shimon says, well, I'll tell you exactly how much it was. It was such and such an amount. And they were in a barrel. And so it was. To which Reuven says, Ein achinami, but your sesame seeds, you already chapped them back arayin, and these are different ones. So Rav Chizda thought to say in this case, this is the same case as the Talmidei Chachamim. These two Talmidei Chachamim were drowned, and the women gave signs, and we assume that they were dead based on those signs. So here also, we should trust Shimon that he said exactly how much sesame seeds there were, and that they were in a barrel, and so we should trust him. And we don't assume, like Reuven argues, that no, these are different sesame seeds. Rava says you can't compare the sesame seeds to the Torah scholars. When it came to the Torah scholars, these women gave signs. What signs are there on sesame seeds? There's no way of knowing that these are the sesame seeds that were there or not. What about the fact that Shimon said yes, but there was such and such amount? I'll say, okay, there's a barrel full of sesame seeds. Shimon already took back the barrel full of sesame seeds, and it was filled up with the other sesame seeds. So it was the same amount, but different sesame seeds. Only Makshisha bar Rav Chizda the Ravashi. So now Makshisha bar Rav Chizda says to Ravashi, Umi chayshinon shema pinon. Do we really have to be concerned? Like Rav is saying that they're different sesame seeds. But we learn in the Mishnah, Motza Kli, if he finds in the Beis HaMikdash during the time of the Romans, when they weren't allowing people to be shomer Torah or mitzvahs, and if you find in the Beis HaMikdash a Kli, a vessel, v'chos olav, and it's written on it, Kuf, the letter Kuf, it means korban. It means that in it contains money for korbanis. Mem Meiser, if there's a mem on the barrel, so then, on the vessel, so then we assume that it's Meiser Sheni. Dalit Dimur, if there's a dalit on the vessel, so then we assume that it contains chulin that truma got mixed together with. Tes Tevel, if there's a test, then we assume that it's untied produce, Tov Truma, and if there's a Tov on it, so then we assume that it's truma in there. Shebishas HaSakona, because during the dangerous times, when the Nudniks, as Rashi says, Bishas HaSakona Shagazu Shel L'Kayim Mitzvahs, that the Nudnik said that the Yidden aren't allowed to do mitzvahs. So we say what? Hayukozvin Tov Tachas Truma. They would write Tov instead of Truma, etc. Right? Kuf instead of Korban. So we see that we're assuming that the contents were not moved. That it's actually the same contents. That if it says Tov, we can assume it's Truma. Omer Ravina Ravashi, to which Ravina says to Ravashi, V'lo chayshinon shem apinon. 1 second. Are we not concerned that maybe they're different? Ema Seifa, because if we continue reading in the Brisa, what does it say? Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi, afilu motzo choves v'chosuv ole trume, that even if you find a barrel that explicitly says on it trume, hari elu chulin. We have to assume that they are actually chulin, that the contents were changed. Shani Omer shtaket avamole trume ufino. Because I have to assume actually that last year was filled with truma, but they removed the truma. Now it's chulin. Rather, both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi are concerned that actually maybe the contents are different. Just that here's the machlokas. That Tanakama says, yeah, but if they removed the contents, then they would have removed the label as well. Ve'idach, whereas Rabbi Yossi says, Eimar yishtaluye ishtali inam lefanchia shavke. Right, whereas Rabbi Yossi says, well, maybe they forgot to take off the, the contents are different, and maybe they just forgot to take off the label. Or perhaps the reason why they kept the label on there is because they didn't want other people taking it, right? If they say it's truma, so people will leave it alone. They'll put chulin in there, right? That reminds me of a story of one of my uncles, that he noticed that if ever he bought Haagen-Dazs ice cream, so then the people would eat it right away. He's got people in his family, and it's not like me where if I buy ice cream, which I don't, but if I buy ice cream, nobody's gonna eat it except for me, which is probably why I don't buy it. But he had other people around. So if you would buy Haagen-Dazs ice cream, so the people would eat it. So what he did was, I think he noticed that one of the other brands, maybe Turkey Hill or something, so I guess people weren't as excited. So he took the Turkey Hill and he filled it up with Haagen-Dazs. And then he was able to trick the people. So here also, if you take a barrel right on a truma, then people aren't gonna eat it because it's truma. But really it's chulin. Anyways, so therefore, okay, so that is the machlokas darton. So we can see then that I guess we do have to be concerned that maybe they got removed. Well, anyways, that was that. We're gonna stop here because otherwise it goes on for a while. That was Daf Kuftes Vav, Daf 115 of Masechta Yevamos. We started the 15th chapter of Masechta Yevamos, 15 out of 16, friends. We're getting close to the end of Masechta Yevamos. We talk about a situation where a woman says that her husband was dispatched to Elwood, and L'maisa we believe her. We believe her. And but if they were fighting, or if there was war going on in the world, right, reasons why we might think that maybe, right, if there's war, so then maybe she doesn't actually know as for a fact that her husband died. Maybe she's assuming that he died. And if there is, and if they've been fighting, maybe she's just like upset with him and therefore just wants to like say that he's dead to make herself usher on him. So in those cases, we can't necessarily trust her. We then wanted to know what about a situation where she comes and we don't know that there's wars going on in the world, and she tells us that there's wars going on in the world. So now at that point, can we trust her or not? Do we say that Mali l'shakar, right? If she's already being honest, then we could trust that she's being honest, and when she says he's dead, he's dead. Or do we say, yeah, but it's not about being honest, it's about, because there's a war going on, she may think that he's dead without knowing for sure that he's dead. We didn't necessarily resolve that query. We saw different arguments either way. And then we asked the question about, what about an Eid Echad? Can an Eid Echad be trusted in the context of a milchama? Do we say that the reason why we trust an Eid Echad is because, if the husband's alive, so then, he'll just kind of prove it wrong by showing up the next day, so therefore the guy will be careful before he testifies? Or is it that we rely upon her to do her due diligence, in which case she may not, because there's a war going on, she may not do her proper due diligence over here. And again, in that case, it doesn't seem like we necessarily currently have an unequivocal answer if an Eid Echad would be believed in the context of a war. Friends, that was Daf Kuf Tesvav Masechta Yevamos. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.